Good afternoon, students, and welcome to today's lecture on how to be an archaeologist. I'm your professor, Dr. Rob Steffen, and today we are going to learn how to date ancient Greek and Roman sculpture like a pro. So imagine this. You're strolling through a museum, and your girlfriend or boyfriend's like, "Wow, that's really old sculpture." You smirk to yourself and you say, "Well, actually, you can tell this is classical in date because of the contrapposto stance and the idealized anatomy." Instantly, you're the most impressive person in the room. Greek sculpture evolved dramatically, moving from kind of stiff and blocky to dynamic and lifelike. And once you know the key clues, you can date any Greek statue like a boss, and maybe even impress your next museum date. So let's go ahead and break it down. First up, we've got the Archaic period, from the 8th century BC to the kind of beginning of the 5th century BC. This was really when everyone was smiling. So Archaic Greek sculpture is all about symmetry, stiffness, and that archaic smile. If the statue looks rigid, with one foot slightly forward and arms stuck at its sides, you're looking at an archaic kouros, that's the male term, or a kori, the female term for the statue. The hair is usually long and beaded into braids, and the face always has that kind of mysterious half smile, possibly to show some real vitality. But here's the kicker. Greek sculptors, they didn't invent this themselves. They borrowed very heavily from Egyptian art. They admired Egyptian statues with their rigid frontal poses and idealized proportions, and they adapted this style for their own needs. While Egyptian statues were typically attached to stone-backed slabs for support, Greek koroi, that's the plural for a kouros or a kori, were standing free. A big step towards kind of the lifelike forms from later periods. So if the statue looks like it was stuck in a stiff, upright pose, but has that kind of distinct Greek touch, that, my friend, is an archaic Greek statue. Alright, so now we hit the classical period, the 5th and 4th century BC, and this is when statues got a little bit sassy. By the classical period, Greek sculptors finally figured out how to make statues look a little bit more natural and dynamic. The biggest giveaway here? Contrapposto. This is where the weight shifts onto one leg, making the statue look like it's about to step or strike a pose on the runway. Muscles are more defined. Faces look calmer, and the expressions are more subtle rather than exaggerated. No more awkward smiles, just stoic perfection. So if the statue looks like it could walk off its pedestal and start giving philosophical advice, you, my friend, are looking at a classical sculpture from the 5th or 4th century BC. After the classical period, we get the Hellenistic period, from the latter part of the 4th century or 300s BC, all the way to the end of the 1st century BC. And this is when sculptors went full drama mode. So if classical statues were calm and collected, Hellenistic statues are bursting with emotion and movement. Expect twisting bodies, wild expressions, and super detailed drapery that clings to every muscle and curve of the skin. This period was all about drama, with sculptures capturing extreme emotion, whether it's pain, like Laocoon and his sons, or victory, like the Nike of Samothrace, or raw athleticism, like the boxer at rest. If the statue looks like it's having a full-blown existential crisis or is caught in mid-action, you, my friend, are definitely in the Hellenistic period, from the end of the 4th to the end of the 1st centuries BC. Now let's go ahead and conclude with the Roman period, from maybe the 1st century BC up until around 400 AD. This is when power and propaganda took over. The Romans admired Greek sculpture so much that they copied it relentlessly. They literally would take a Greek sculpture and then carve the exact same thing. But they also made some key changes. So, original Roman statues, they tended to emphasize realism and individualism, especially when it came to portraits of generals and emperors. So unlike the idealized Greeks, Romans loved showing wrinkles and scars and balding heads to emphasize wisdom, experience, and military toughness. You'll see emperors in military armor, in togas, and in heroic nude poses, depending on whether they're going for the kind of fearsome ruler vibe or the kind of more descendant of the gods vibe. So if the statue looks hyper-realistic with a serious power pose, then you've got a Roman statue on your hands. Alright, let's go ahead and conclude with our cheat sheet to dating Greek and Roman sculpture. We'll begin with the Archaic period, from the 8th century to the end of the 6th century BC. Sculpture during this time was stiff, symmetrical, influenced by ancient Egypt, and always had that little archaic smile. It kind of sort of looks like an idealized mannequin. Then we hit the Classical period, the 5th and the 4th century, the 400s and the 300s BC. That is characterized by the contrapposto stance, calm expressions, and realistic, but idealized, anatomy. Next up, the Hellenistic period, from the end of the 4th century through the end of the 1st century BC. This was all about drama, twisting motion, deep emotion, and highly detailed drapery. And then finally, we hit the Roman period, with realistic wrinkles, military poses, togas, power, and propaganda. And there you have it. With these tricks, you'll never again just see an old statue. You'll spot archaic stiffness, classical grace, Hellenistic drama, and Roman power, like a seasoned archaeologist. Now go forth and date some sculptures like a boss.